Churn and retention are crucial metrics in almost any industry. You want to know how many users are still active after like 6 months, or whether certain user groups are churning faster than others. For this, you will need a cohort analysis, because this is the only way where you can compare user groups fairly over time. Today, I'll walk you through a simple reusable workflow. We will extract some data with SQL, prepare the data in BigQuery, and afterwards we will export it into a Google Sheet where we are building the final retention table. Now, you will see a lot of tutorials doing this directly in Excel or maybe in Tableau with the raw data. While this is fine and good for the learning, this is not how things will work in real analytics, because the data sets are normally too big. It doesn't scale. So you will always need to go the way to shape the data, clean the data in SQL, and depending on your setup, maybe you will just export it into Google Sheet or use another frontend. We will be working with a simple subscription dataset for this tutorial. It's very similar to what you will find for any kind of SaaS company working with subscriptions. But in general, churn retention is relevant for any kind of businesses, if it's like finance, banking, e-commerce, whatever. For the cohort analysis, we actually only need 3 different attributes. We need the first month where the user was signing up. We need to know where afterwards, in what months the user was active. And this is a little bit optional, but we also would like some kind of sign-up attribute so that we can compare different cohorts with each other. So looking at the data, you see that we're having like user ID, we have a subscription ID, start and end date, etc. Everything is not important for us here. In general, only the user ID, the start date, and the tier we also will be using when preparing the data. Let's do some work in SQL. So I will build a CTE here and start with a base. I will actually only keep the relevant columns, so user ID. And in order to get the first month per each of the user, I will use a partition formula, minimum of the start over partition by user ID as I'll name this cohort month, because this user will belong to this cohort. I will also get the first value of the tier so that we have this as an attribute. And here I will need to order it by start ascending as first tier. What we also want to do here, because you see I name it cohort month, and this will just give me a specific date. So I will actually make this a month by using the trunk function like this. And I will do the same for the start date. So I will just make a month for the active month like this. Trunk start month, just to get the month where the user was active in. I don't care about the end date in this specific case. Let's have a look at this data, how it looks. Here you see we have the user ID, the cohort month stays the same actually over time. And for the active month, you see we're getting just the month levels up here. This is the first step done. Now I will add a month counter or user month column, which is basically just the date diff between the cohort month, or the actually, let me just start with the higher one, the active month and the cohort month in month as user month. And this will be an attribute going from 0 up to 1, 2, 3, 4. So the sign up month will be month 0, and the month 1 is then the 1 month after sign up month, etc., etc. You will see how it looks. Here we're getting month 0, month 1, month 2, etc., etc. Now I will aggregate this table because we can't export this just like this into Excel or into a sheet or anything. So I will create a subset which is named active users as, and here I will make the aggregation by select cohort month. I will also bring in the first tier. For that I will make count distinct user ID as active users. I also need the user month, sorry. User month. Order by cohort month. User month. Running this, we see that we are having users for this specific cohort with the first tier basic. In the sign up month, month 0, we have 469 users, then it goes down to 390, 390, and it drops, which makes sense, you know, because we're losing users over time. What you will need in order to calculate the churn rate, for example, for each of these months is to know how many users were there in the sign up month. Basically this number. You could export this data just into Excel and, you know, structure your pivot tables or whatever so that you can calculate this figure. I personally really like to fix this in SQL directly so you don't have to play around and mess so much in Excel. And for that we will make a table here named cohort size, and here I will just make select cohort month. I will also take in the first tier, and here I will just count the distinct user ID as cohort size. So this one will give me the cohort size, and if I'm using this table and joining this onto the active users, you will see how it looks, and this will make our life so much simpler when we're doing the calculations in Excel. And we're adding the cohort size here. And now you will see that we're having this cohort size as a specific column, which means that we immediately can just calculate the rates out of this. Nice, that's actually it. We prepared our data as much as we can. We're having 7,600 rows, which is perfectly fine for a sheet. We have the data. I will make a pivot table, just like this. We can put the cohort month as rows. As columns, we will use the user month. Let's bring in the active users into this table. So here you see, for example, the cohort here. We have 700 users and then it drops down. This is our initial cohort table with the users. This doesn't make too much sense right now. What we want to know is the ratio, you know, between what's the churn rate, the ratio between 700 and 596, for example. For this, we can use the cohort size, which we're having. So let's say that we are, instead of using the active users as a value, I will remove this one. Instead, I will add a calculated field. And here I will say active users divided by cohort size. Now we are getting the percentage values. I will format this a little bit so that it looks nice. Let's remove the decimal places. We also don't need the totals because they don't make so much sense. And finally, we can actually make a little conditional formatting to this one. Let's make a color scale. We can make it from, so what we want, high numbers are good numbers because this is basically the retention. And we are basically done. What you see here now is, for example, in month 3 from the cohort February 2020, we are having a retention of the users at 79%. In month 12, this is 45%. And with this table, you can pretty quick identify outliers. For example, one outlier would be this one. The 1st of the January 2021, we have a much lower first month retention rate compared to previous months. So this is an obvious drop. Same one here. So maybe it's also a January. Maybe that's something with January for this data set. If you want the churn rate instead of the retention rate, some businesses want to report it as the churn rate. You can basically just type 1- in this calculated field, and you're getting the churn rate. Then obviously also you would need to switch over, because now the zeros is the good one, so you would need to switch the conditional formatting to make sense. And also from the beginning, if you recall that I was also bringing in the first tier, typically when you're comparing cohorts, you also want to break this down and filter it by, for example, the premium tier. So let's maybe do that here. Let's make the first tier and see how it looks for premium. I will actually remove the churn here and make it as a retention instead. So here you see that we're having pretty high first month retention. And for basic, let's see how it looks. It's like below 90% here. So this is also some kind of insights that you can find when building these cohort tables to compare different attributes. Also, typically you're having maybe a sign up, an acquisition source for your data where you can compare the different cohorts also. That's basically the whole workflow. SQL for the logic, Sheets for the visualization. This setup scales very well, is easy to maintain, and you can reuse it for pretty much any use cases and any businesses. In the next video, I will take this a step further and show you how you, with this similar setup, can calculate the customer lifetime value using a similar, clean, and practical approach. So please don't forget to subscribe, and see you in the next video.